Good evening and welcome to Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, polls apart. You and I have discussed before how public opinion surveys are really snapshots in time. Now keep that in mind as we check the latest Iowa poll conducted by Quinnipiac. This new poll has things heating up, basically a dead heat between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, as the Donald's 2-point lead is well within the poll's margin of error. Now, contrast the new survey with the Fox News Opinion Dynamics poll released over the weekend, showing Trump with an 11-point lead. Last night on this program, both Craig Shirley and John Zogby said Ted Cruz had suffered through a bad week, but that the endorsements he picked up from Glenn Beck and Rick Perry could help him.
They certainly can't hurt. I mean, especially after coming off what was arguably one of the worst weeks in the history of presidential politics, what Ted Cruz just went through.
He had a terrible week, and I think the key point against him was everybody hates this guy. Anybody who knows him hates him. Well, the governor of his own state and Glenn Beck, who's a famous and very good rated talk show host, are actually endorsing him. I think that helps to neutralize his worst negative.
I'm joined at the anchor desk by Miranda Kahn, and for more on the upcoming Iowa caucuses, we're pleased to be joined in turn via Skype from the Hawkeye State by the host of the Steve Deace Show. Why, it would be Steve Deace. Steve's also the author of the book, Rules for Patriots, How Conservatives Can Win Again. Steve, we do appreciate your time tonight on Newsmax Prime. And let's acknowledge at the outset, you have endorsed Ted Cruz. Now, we just talked about the two latest polls. We heard over the weekend that Trump had a big lead. Now it's down within the margin of error. Ted Cruz right there on his heels. Why the disparity in the polling in Iowa?
Because people don't know how to poll Iowa, JD. They don't know how to find out who's going to actually vote. Iowa State University had a poll last night, put Ted Cruz at a 7-point lead over Donald Trump. You look at the Fox poll that you mentioned, they claim that 173,000 Iowans voted in the caucuses last year, but Republicans only had last time, but Republicans only had 120,000 show up. So either they had 53,000 people lie to them, or they are telling us 53,000 Democrats are going to cross over and vote for Donald Trump, which is absurd. If you look at the CNN poll that had Trump with the 11-point lead, they're claiming 300,000 Iowans are going to vote. JD, we've never had more than 125,000 people show up in the caucuses. We haven't even had 300,000 people show up in a state primary before. So the problem is the turnout models, and in a caucus that is tough to gauge, which is why historically the polling in Iowa, whether it's John Kerry polling at 23% in 2004 and then he wins the caucuses with 37, or it's Rick Santorum polling at 16% and he wins the caucuses with 25, the polling in Iowa traditionally is very spotty.
Well, Steve, what I want to ask you, though, I know you've endorsed Ted Cruz, but Liberty University President Jerry Falwell Jr. has officially announced that he is personally endorsing Donald Trump. How do you think that this will impact the evangelical vote, specifically in Iowa?
Not at all. Other than maybe a few people deciding whether to refile their Liberty degrees. It reminds me of 2008, Miranda, when Pat Robertson endorsed Rudy Giuliani, who was a pro-abort, and his political relevancy has been zero ever since. And I think whatever political relevancy Jerry Falwell Jr. had coming into this is one of those endorsements that doesn't help the person you want to help, that only hurts you. And I don't think it's going to turn out the way that they would like.
Steve, you spoke of the notorious unreliability of polling in Iowa, yet Trump, in some of these surveys, had been polling better with evangelicals than Ted Cruz. So the senator sounded the alarm to a group of pastors about what a Trump win in Iowa might lead to and what it would take to stop the Donald. Let's look and listen to Ted's passionate plea.
It is an absolute dead heat. And if Donald wins Iowa, he right now has a substantial lead in New Hampshire. If he went on to win New Hampshire as well, there's a very good chance he could be unstoppable and be our nominee. If conservatives simply stand up and unite, that's everything.
Will evangelicals heed Ted Cruz and his call right there?
I think so, JD. I've told you all along, even before I came on board, we've done this for how many moons now? And I've told you I thought all along he was going to end up winning Iowa. He's got the best evangelical outreach organization in this state. We've had 3 contested Iowa caucuses this century, 2000, 08, and 012. And the guy that did the best with evangelical voters won them all. And I think Cruz has just as good an evangelical organization, if not better, than those 3 individuals did. And that's why I think he's going to win on Monday.
This ad may help him. Mr. Cruz also released a new attack ad going after Donald Trump and referencing what he calls his so-called New York values. Here's a sampling of that.
I mean, hey, I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So, you know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
They are different, like on abortion.
Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I am pro-choice in every respect.
And what does Trump think about Iowa?
How stupid are the people of Iowa?
Donald Trump, New York values, not ours.
You know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
I'm Ted Cruz, and I approve this message.
Steve, do you think this will persuade Iowa voters in any way?
Absolutely. I think that it was. I think you saw this come out of the debate on the 15th. The only successful attack we've seen on Trump was this line of attack. And I think the reason why, Miranda, is whether it was Jeb Bush or others earlier in this process, they sort of attacked Donald Trump on, you don't obey the Andover Prep rules of engagement. You're not nice enough. Well, nobody cares who's nice when your country's falling apart. They want to know who's going to do something about it. Cruz is the first person to actually attack Trump from the right on values and on issues, and no one has done that before. And in the end, people want to vote for a conservative, Miranda. People don't want to just send a message. They want to elect a president.
Steve Deace, let me follow up specifically on the New York values question. You will recall in the wake of the last debate, there were people who thought that Trump got the better of Ted in that exchange. But I guess you've seen polling numbers where the whole New York values charge resonates with Iowa caucus goers.
Yeah, the same people who told Trump that he was going to fall on his face for saying there's something wrong with our Muslim immigration plan are the same people who thought that the New York values comment wouldn't work for Ted Cruz. They were wrong then. And they're wrong now. And it's because they don't talk to too many people that live in the states in between California and New York. Pretty much everybody else in the country nodded their heads when Ted Cruz said that and said, yep, I know exactly what he's talking about, including a lot of people in Iowa.
And Steve, you talk to a lot of Iowans and a lot of people nationally. We thank you for talking to us tonight. Also, Miranda, we thank you very much for your time. Steve Deace on the ground in Iowa.